Certainly you are well aware, though, by now of our big story. It is arguably the biggest story in all of sports right now. Speaking, of course, of the post-game incident in the handshake line after the Michigan-Wisconsin game yesterday afternoon. Heated exchange between Greg Gard and Juwan Howard, both unhappy with the other's coaching decisions down the stretch. In a game the Badgers won rather handily. Ultimately, others getting involved, including Wisconsin assistant Joe Krabenhoff, who Howard had hit right there with an open palm. Some players scuffling as well. Really just an ugly and unfortunate scene. Here's what those involved had to say after the game.
I'll walk you through my last 15 seconds of the game. So we only have 4 seconds to get the ball across half court. Okay, the official comes over to me and says, Greg, if you take a timeout, you'll get a full 10 seconds. There was 15 seconds on the game clock left. Okay, I had all the reserves in. Okay, I was not going to put them in a position when the ball had already got knocked out of bounds to have to break a press in 4 seconds when they're coming cold off the bench. So I took a timeout, which I'm allowed to do, obviously, and brought them over and tried to get them organized. They haven't all been on the floor in pressure situations before, and I want to give them the best chance to have success coming up the floor and tell them we're not going to shoot the ball. All we're doing is getting the ball, break the pressure, come up, and we'll dribble out the clock. So we got the full 10 seconds to break that press instead of 4 seconds. So we were on the spot, we got organized, and that is the situation that he apparently was upset with.
Well, basically, I addressed with the head coach that I will remember that because of that timeout, and for someone to touch me, and I think that was very uncalled for him to touch me as we were verbalizing and communicating with one another. So that's what ended up happening, and that's what escalated it.
I thought it was appropriate to comment on the events that transpired at the end of the game today. I would just start by saying there's no room. There's no space for conduct like that at any competition, much less a Big Ten competition. The Big Ten takes pride in sportsmanship. The Big Ten takes pride in acting with class, and that didn't happen today.
Andy Katz is joining us now, and let me just preface this by saying, Andy, I spoke with the conference this morning with a conference representative. They're still reviewing the incident, so no decisions made as of this point. Through what lens do you view that final 30 seconds or so of action?
Well, a couple things, Dave. First off, head coaches are allowed to coach their team the way they see fit. In the last 20 seconds, both head coaches decided to coach this game out. Juwan had his players pressing, and then Greg obviously opted to call a timeout. And the rule states, as he was saying, that you have 10 seconds to get the ball across half court. It was at the 4-second mark. So when you call a timeout, that 10-second count, when the official goes like this, resets. And he had 15 left on the game clock. Now, people can debate whether or not either side should have just let it go. The result was obviously known. Wisconsin was going to win the game. To me, this is very much like when we see when a losing coach knows he's going to lose and then keeps fouling. And you'll hear the fans boo and people moan. Even us announcers say, why do they keep extending this game? Well, you know what? That is his or her right to extend the game how they see fit. Both coaches decided to do that. Is that the appropriate time to discuss it in a handshake line? Once again, that can be up for debate whether or not that is the appropriate time. Obviously, it escalated after that, and slap punches were thrown, and clearly there will be suspensions going forward. We don't know who exactly. We know at least a couple of players, likely from Michigan, possibly at least one, if not more, from Wisconsin. And that will happen. And the Big Ten has a sportsmanship policy that they max out at 2-game suspension plus a $10,000 fine that they can put onto a university or a person, obviously a professional, not a player. And the universities, in these cases, obviously Michigan and Wisconsin, can extend it. They can certainly add to it. They certainly could appeal as well. So as we are discussing here, we're going to have to obviously wait and see how the penalties are handed out. We know there will be penalties. We just don't know to what degree. And then how it will affect really both schools, but especially Michigan, based on what they have remaining and where they are in the Big Ten standings and in the NCAA tournament. I think everyone would agree it was an ugly incident in college basketball. It became a national story on Sunday, in large part because, football is over. So all the spotlight came. It was a nationally televised CBS broadcast. They were on the air when it occurred. So clearly it was something that, put a mark on the sport and the game, obviously in the manner in which it ended.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, Andy. I do want to ask you, I know you reached out to both schools. What did you learn in that process that maybe informed some of what you just talked about?
So obviously, I want to preface this by saying Michigan issued very quickly, and I think they should be complimented as such, a statement yesterday by Ward Manuel, the athletic director, where he apologized very quickly to Chris McIntosh. You just saw him, the athletic director from Wisconsin. And then there was definitely conversations at the presidential level. As we know, Michigan has an interim president, and then President Blank or Chancellor Blank at Wisconsin, who's going to soon be the Northwestern president. She's still in place there. So we know that it's at that high level. I have spoken to Wisconsin head coach Greg Gard. I have not spoken to Michigan head coach Juwan Howard. So I only have that side. But pretty much what Greg said in that newser, that's what he told me as well. He said that Joe Krabenhoff said, back off. I don't know if anything else was said. That is, what he told me he said. I don't know if something else was said to escalate it to another level. But I would like to obviously hear a little bit more from Michigan and at some point maybe from Joe Krabenhoff when he came in to, we don't know if he was coming in to de-escalate or escalate at that moment. But the bottom line is you saw from Chris McIntosh, Wisconsin immediately reacted in talking to Ward Manuel, talking to Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren. They are definitely hot about it. There's no question about it. And they fully expect some action. But we'll see if Wisconsin obviously also faces some sort of penalty in some form or fashion.
All right, Andy, really good reporting on this. And again, we will see, hoping to have a resolution here in the reasonably short-term future, but definitely appreciate your insights and all your good work on this. Andy Katz filling us in on the very latest on this incident. We did hear from Chris McIntosh. Andy did mention that Michigan's administration responded as well. This was the statement from Ward Manuel. He's saying there's no excuse for any of our staff or student athletes to get into a physical altercation with others, regardless of instigating factors. I reached out and apologized to Chris McIntosh, and President Coleman has reached out to UW Chancellor Blank to apologize for the totally unacceptable behavior. We will review the situation more thoroughly and work with the Big Ten Conference as they determine their disciplinary actions, and will determine if further disciplinary actions are warranted. So again, that brings us up to date. That process is going on right now. In the meantime, as promised, Trent Meacham is here. Let's talk a little bit about the game. This was a game that was anybody's game at halftime, and then Wisconsin kind of taken over in the second half. Johnny Davis was fantastic down the stretch. What did you see there?
Yeah, two quick comments. One, as a former player, I'm totally fine. Play out the game. If that's how you want to play out the game. There's some talk of handshake lines, too. You got to continue that. That's part of the game. Win, lose, or draw in combat sports, wrestling, boxing. You look them in the eye, you shake their hand. We should continue with that. But this was a great game, Dave. So let's get into that. Wisconsin, tie game at half. Back and forth, great battle. Michigan takes an early lead in the second half. They're up by 5. Wisconsin goes on a 23-3 run. And they just took control of the game like Wisconsin does. And it was really a balanced effort. It was Hepburn, it was Crowell, it was Davison, and then Johnny Davis just took over. I thought he was terrific, getting in the paint, imposing his will. He finishes through contact. He's great going left, finishing with his left hand. Just so difficult to stop when everybody's focused on him. Another statement performance from, probably at this point, the Big Ten Player of the Year.
All 5 starters, though, in double figures, to your point, for Wisconsin. And they really did a tremendous job on the perimeter. Michigan's been up and down at times with its shooting, but really couldn't get anything to fall from three-point range. And I thought Wisconsin in the second half did a really good job on Hunter Dickinson as well. It felt like in the first half he was controlling the flow a little bit more, but defensively both on the interior and on the perimeter, a really good job in the second half by the Badgers.
Yeah, for sure. And Michigan is at the bottom of the Big Ten in three-point shooting percentage and makes a game. They're just over 6 makes a game, so they struggle shooting the ball. And what I thought is they took too many quick looks. They had some open looks early in the shot clock, but I don't think that's a shot you want Devontae Jones taking. I think as it's moved, as it's gone inside and out, later in the shot clock, take those shots. I thought they rushed a few trying to get back in the game, and Wisconsin is just so solid defensively, did a good job on the boards, and they just, again, it's kind of like they just milk it, and they just take control of the game, just what they did. And I also want to point out Chucky Hepburn, freshman point guard, is just so solid. I think that his maturity, his poise, he defends at a high level. He's strong. He made some great reads in pick and roll. You saw that behind-the-back pass to Stephen Crowell popping out for a three. That gave them the lead for good. I'm just so impressed. His numbers don't blow you away. It's 7.5 points a game, only a few assists a game. His shooting numbers he's below 40%. But, man, you talk about his leadership and his poise as a freshman point guard. He's been phenomenal.
The staff's been incredibly complimentary of him. I've spoken to Greg Gard a few times during the course of this season and has echoed exactly what you have said, that he just stepped in from the get-go and as a consummate team player, he defends. He is really good. It puts Michigan in a tough spot now. I mean, Michigan's going to have to win some games here down the stretch. The Wolverines, we take a look at their schedule. They're 8-7 in the league. Now, they do head home for 4 straight games. All but one of their remaining games, quad one opportunities. The one that isn't against a very dangerous Rutgers team, a game you can see here on the Big Ten Network on Wednesday. Then Illinois, Michigan State, Iowa, followed by Ohio State on the road. Let's go quickly through the rest of this weekend's headlines. The marquee game was in East Lansing, Illinois topping Michigan State Saturday. Iowa got its first quad one win of the season. Really impressive victory at Ohio State. And Purdue ended Rutgers' 4-game win streak, topping the Scarlet Knights yesterday at Mackey. Let's focus first on Illinois. Kofi inside, Jacob Grandison outside. Just too much for Michigan State to handle.
Kofi's too much for just about everybody. It's almost another ho-hum, 27-9, goes 10 for 15 from the field. I thought he goes 7 for 9 from the free throw line. That's really important. I think that's the most important stat when you look at Kofi Cockburn, because it's another day at the gym, another night at the office, 27-9, so dominant, and how Illinois surrounds him with three-point shooters. It's Alfonso Plummer oftentimes. It's Trent Frazier. He hit a clutch shot, but Jacob Grandison, 6 for 10 from threes. He's been struggling. He credited a 2 a.m. shooting session coming back from that loss to Rutgers. You get in, it's cold, it's February in Illinois. You go to the gym, you get shots up, and you respond in a remarkable way. He also had 5 assists, great post-feed passer to Kofi. So big win for the Illini on the road.
You were a heck of a shooter in your day. Did you ever go to the gym at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Not in mid-February, coming back when it's freezing after a road loss. I never did that. So kudos to Jacob Grandison, whoever coaches, managers were there with him as well.
The one thing I do want to say about Michigan State, and they've been so inconsistent, and they're just really hard to figure out. But, man, Tyson Walker down the stretch was unbelievable. I mean, almost single-handedly brought them back in this game.
26 points, 5 assists, 1 turnover, 10 for 12 from the field. This is what I loved about Michigan State. So Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard, typically they overlap about 2 minutes a game. They played together 20 minutes. Okay, this is a team that struggles taking care of the ball. That's been well documented. Why don't you play 2 point guards together? It takes pressure off the other player. You have more capable ball handlers, decision makers. In that game, they go for 41 points, 13 assists, 4 turnovers. That's terrific from your 2 guards. I would love to see them play together more. That second half, they scored 52 points on Illinois.
Yeah, Michigan State is not a moral victory team. I mean, we certainly understand that given their incredible track record and how good they've been in Final Fours in March, whatnot. But I do think, and Tom Izzo said something to this effect in the postgame, you can take some positives out of the way they rallied. Obviously, you're Michigan State. You want to win the game. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They head home for a difficult game, or head to Iowa City, I should say, tomorrow for a really difficult game. But, something positive, I think, in what's been a challenging couple weeks here for the Spartans. We got more from Trent coming up. Really good win. New Top 25 out this morning. Purdue moving up 1 spot to number 4 You see Wisconsin up a couple spots. They are 13. Illinois now 15. Ohio State 22nd. Iowa into the poll at number 25. And Michigan State and Rutgers, the first two among the others receiving votes. The Big Ten nearly was 7 in the poll, but with 5 in there. Trent Meacham back with us. Let's start with that Purdue team. The top Rutgers yesterday, we mentioned that briefly. I really just came down to, in the second half, Rutgers seemed to have no answer for Jaden Ivey getting into the lane and getting to the free throw line.
Not many teams do.
No.
And really, I thought you'll hear coaches talk about the end of the first half and beginning of the second half, and that's where Purdue took control. That game was 35-36. Rutgers was down 1 with 2 minutes left in the first half. Purdue finishes that half on a 9-1 run. They opened the second half on an 11-0 run, just busted the game open.
Right.
And it was Ivey, it was Edey, it was Williams, and Stefanovic, kind of their 4 top guys. But then, as you said, Jaden Ivey, I mean, to shoot 18 free throws, just to get to the free throw line so much. We've talked about Ja Morant comparison. I'm liking a Dwayne Wade comp. I mean, just his ability to glide through the open court, to weave through the paint, to initiate contact, to finish above the rim, just relentless attack in the basket. When he's doing that, I mean, it's over. You saw that dunk at the end of the first half. I mean, that's just scary. So when he imposes his will, puts his foot on the pedal like that, I don't know if there's anybody in the country that can quite contain him.
The glare was pretty good, too. The glare at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, when they get their offense going, they scored nearly 1.4 points per possession against a defense that had been playing extremely well in Rutgers. So it speaks to when they get going on a high level, and as you said, they have so many different weapons who can beat you, they're really tough to stop. I will say this, give a ton of credit to Rutgers, right? I mean, they got themselves down by 20. They fought back. They got it to 10. They never led in this game. And yet, they never gave up either. I mean, they showed they are going to be a relentless team. They showed that confidence that we've seen here over the past couple of weeks. This is a team that clearly is going to be a force to be reckoned with down the stretch, and already is.
They've showed us something the last couple of weeks, and they showed me something on Sunday against Purdue, because Purdue started off so hot, and how they battled back, how they played through foul trouble. Rutgers shot 51% from the floor. They struggled from 3. They got 18 points from their bench. I thought that's big when you bring out Moat Mag and even Jalen Miller in stints. Andre Hyatt, Dean Reber is really improved this year.
Yeah.
The thing with Rutgers, they have no weak links on the defensive end. There's not one guy you can kind of go at. Some teams go at Alfonso Plummer. Michigan State also went at Andre Curbelo. There's nobody you can do that with Rutgers. They're all really stout defensively, so they showed me a lot. I think the key for Rutgers is how do they respond? They were playing well earlier this year. They lost that game to Minnesota. Then they proceeded to lose 2 of the next 3, to Maryland, to Northwestern, almost lost to Nebraska before they got on this run. Can they respond from that loss in a good way?
Well, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on their next game because they are taking on Michigan on Wednesday, as we mentioned here on the Big Ten Network. Purdue, which has played so many games in rapid succession, off until Saturday. And in talking to Matt Painter last week, I think the Boilermakers really need this break, but they go into it with a whole lot of momentum. What about Iowa? Going to Columbus, we've been talking about they don't have a quad 1 win. They don't have a quad 1 win. They got a quad 1 win, and a really good one against a team that's battling for the Big Ten title. 2
things for Iowa. I've been bullish on them all year, Dave, but Keegan Murray, is he in contention for Big Ten Player of the Year? The way he played against E.J. Liddell, goes for 24 and 5, another kind of everyday thing for him at the office. He was terrific, defended at a high level, held Liddell to 15 points, and then Iowa on the defensive end. They were really good. They out-rebounded Ohio State 40-31. That second half limited them to 24 points. Their length, their quickness, their versatility, they mixed from zone to matchup to man. I really like this Iowa team. It's just going to be fun to see how they finish off this season when you think of both their tournament resume and also this Big Ten Player of the Year race, because Keegan Murray, while he's been leading the league in scoring, he hasn't been talked about because Iowa's been further down in the rankings. I think if they finish strong, they're making a great case for their resume in the tournament, and he's making a great case for Big Ten Player of the Year.
It's turning into a really good story, and you touched on it, but I want you to elaborate on it. Iowa's defense has been maligned. Like, let's just call it what it is here. In recent years, this is a pretty good defensive team. The one weakness has been cleaning up the defensive glass. They have not been great there this year. They're relentless on the offensive glass. They're a really good offensive rebounding team. We saw it again in this game. They were good enough on the defensive glass. But, man, as you said, they are so disruptive. They can get in passing lanes. They can block shots. They are a really good half-court defensive team.
Keegan Murray and Chris Murray, those two guys are maybe the most versatile defenders in the Big Ten. They can switch out on guards. They have great length, great instincts and timing, blocking shots. Patrick McCaffrey, another long athlete. Philip Rebraca can move his feet as a big man. And then you bring these guards off the bench. Joe Toussaint, Aaron Eulis, Tony Perkins. They're kind of bulldogs on that defensive end. And I like Toussaint coming off the bench and the energy he provides in that role. So these guys, a number of these guys are defensive-minded players, and even a player like Keegan Murray, who scores so easily, he can defend at a high level. So the key for them is rebounding. To out-rebound a rugged Ohio State team by 9, that's the biggest thing for them. They're going to struggle against some of the bigs in the Big Ten just because they don't have that one, hulking big man. Maybe they bring Ogundele off the bench in a few minutes, but if they can gain rebound, they're really, really tough.
Yeah, no, it's been a pretty cool story to see that defense improve. A quick turnaround here coming up for Ohio State. They host Indiana later today, and we will talk about that game. The Hawkeyes have Michigan State coming into Iowa City tomorrow.
Archie Griffin became just the 5th junior to win the Heisman Trophy in 1974, and a year later became the first player to win multiple Heisman trophies, a record that still stands today. He ran for 100 yards in an NCAA record 31 straight games, was elected to the College Football Hall of Fame in 1986, and his name graces the Big Ten Championship Game MVP award. It's Griffin's off-the-field work that stands out these days. In 2006, he was appointed to the National Football Foundation and College Football Hall of Fame Board of Directors, and 5 years later, he was the first recipient of the Big Ten's Ford Kinnick Leadership Award. He created the Archie Griffin Scholarship Fund, which benefits Ohio State's Olympic sports. Griffin is one of the most influential people in college sports and is now a big impact pioneer, class of 2022.
Archie Griffin, the list of accolades could go on for pages, but he finished 5th in the Heisman as a sophomore before winning it twice. You see 3 times in All-American. You heard the 31 straight 100-yard rushing games. How's that for consistency? And again, very generous since his career ended, paying it forward in a variety of ways. Archie Griffin is today's big interview. He joins us now. And Archie, there's so many things we could talk about here. And you've been very generous with your time to our network through the years. You and I have spent time in your office, talked through your career, been to Columbus on a couple of different occasions. You, of course, were featured in Big Ten Icons. So I want to start today with why we're talking to you today, and that is being named a big impact pioneer. In what ways do you see yourself as a pioneer?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be on your show, Dave, and talking to you during Black History Month and being able to say that I am a Big Ten pioneer. I feel like there's a lot of others before me that really were the pioneers, but the fact of the matter is that I had the opportunity to play on 4 Big Ten championship teams, and makes all of us guys who played on those teams pioneers. And that was during the first time that freshmen were eligible to play varsity football. So we had that opportunity to get 4 years in. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I think that you could say not only myself, but also those other guys that were on those teams were pioneers as well. But I really feel honored to be able to say that I'm considered as a pioneer.
What does Black History Month mean to you, Archie?
Black History Month means everything to me because it's an opportunity for people to really see some of the accomplishments of Black people, African-American people throughout the world and throughout time. I think it's something that should be mentioned and recognized throughout the year. But the fact that we do have a month where we celebrate Black accomplishment, I think it's really, really special. But again, I think it's something that should be recognized throughout the year. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
You grew up in the 60s and 70s, a really turbulent time. You grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and of course went on to Ohio State. What impact did those challenging times in terms of race have on you?
Well, it had a lot impact on me. I mean, I'm coming up through the 60s and 70s. I've been through some of the things that some others have been through. I've been subject of police stopping me for situations simply because of the color of my skin, and those things really, really leave an impression on you and makes you wonder why things are being done the way that they are. So I mean, it's just one of those situations where you hate, because of the color of your skin, to have somebody do something to you, and you want to correct all those things that's happened in the past, and the things that we do now really, really impact what the future is going to be for future African Americans.
I was looking back at a team picture of your Ohio State teams online the other day, and it's overwhelmingly white, although certainly there are a significant number of African-American players. You talked about, I think, 4 African-American players in your recruiting class in one of the articles that I was reading. But how did Woody Hayes handle the race relations within the team?
I think Coach Hayes handled extremely well. One of the things that I remember that he always said to us was that, beautiful music can't be played on a piano without the black and white keys. And he also said that great football can't be played without the black and white keys playing together. And he always would mention that to us. I played on some teams where our quarterback, Cornelius Green, was the first black quarterback to play at Ohio State. And Cornelius went through some challenges with people criticizing him and wondering why a black quarterback was playing at Ohio State. I was his roommate, so I was able to see a lot of that. And that really impacted him, and it impacted me. And I know that he took it to Woody Hayes, and Woody Hayes helped him handle that. And I was always appreciative of how Coach Hayes handled that situation in particular. The real fact of the matter is Woody Hayes started Cornelius Green above a quarterback who was the captain of our football team. And to me, that showed me that Coach Hayes didn't really care about color. He wanted to put who he felt were the best players out on the football field. And I've always respected that. I've always respected Coach Woody Hayes because of what he did in that situation.
I always think back to that gathering that we had in Columbus when you were named a Big Ten icon, and we brought back a bunch of your teammates, and we watched the Big Ten icon show together, and then had a discussion about you and about that team. And the first question I asked was of a panelist, Brian Baschnagel, and I don't know if you remember this, but I asked him, tell me a little bit about Archie. But it was a fairly innocuous question, right? And Brian Baschnagel started to cry as he talked about the impact that you had had on his life. And for a little background, Brian Baschnagel played the same position you played, right? Was brought in to be a running back at Ohio State. You beat him out. He ended up moving essentially to receiver, and of course had a really nice NFL career as well. But the loyalty that he felt to you and the way that he felt like you had handled the situation and changed his life in a lot of ways has never left me and never will leave me. Just how much he clearly loved and respected you. And that was the theme throughout the evening. Everyone talked in that way. Why do you think you engendered so much loyalty and respect among your teammates?
Well, because I like to believe that, my parents taught me some really good things. And one of the things that they taught me was the golden rule, do unto others as you wish they would do unto you, treat others the way you wish to be treated. And I've approached life that way. And with my teammates, I treat them the way that I want to be treated. And I hope that's respectfully. And I like to believe that that's respectfully. Brian Baschnagel was a very special person to me as well. As a matter of fact, I will tell you to this day, I could not have been in the condition that I was in physically if it wasn't for Brian Baschnagel, because I like working out with Brian Bashnagel, because I knew that if I worked out with Brian Bashnagel, I was going to be in tip-top condition, because Brian was one of those guys that could run forever. And I purposely worked out with Brian because I knew that if I was with him, I was going to be the best that I could be physically. And I always loved that of Brian. And Brian, he's just a great person all the way around. Everybody loved Brian. We had a bunch of guys on those teams like that. I mean, we had a very close-knit team. Cornelius Green was a roommate of mine. Steve Luke, a roommate of mine. We all had a great time. We did a lot of things together, and we still get together every 5 years and recognize those teams. And that's something, Dave, that always feels good when you can get together with your teammates. Woody Hayes told us back then that those guys that you're in this room with will be friends for the rest of your lives. And you know what? He is so right, because those guys were very, very special back then, and they're very, very special now. And I always enjoy getting the opportunity to get with them and look back on our years at Ohio State, our championship years and our Rose Bowls and things of that sort. So it's very special to be able to be a part of a team. And I was lucky enough to be a part of four very, very special teams. And I always say this, that those are the guys that made me look good enough to win the awards that I won. And I truly believe that, because you can't do it without a team. And I was on some very, very special teams.
That being said, Archie, there have been other players on very, very special teams since then, and yet no one has done what you've done, and that is to win 2 consecutive Heismans. I remember sitting in your office the first year of the network, so it's over 14 years ago, and I came to Columbus and we did a long sit-down interview to talk to you about your career. And you said to me, Dave, I know that here at some point someone's going to win consecutive Heismans. I'm not going to be the only guy forever here. And yet, Archie, it's nearly 15 years later, and you're still the only guy. So what does that distinction mean to you?
Oh, it means a great deal. It really does. Again, I think it reflects the teams I played on. You know, here at Ohio State University, I mean, again, special group, but we played extremely well together. It reflects that. But I do think, Dave, there will still be somebody else that will win it again or win it a second time. I mean, you sophomores are winning the Heisman Trophy, and and they're staying at least another year, and I think it's going to be done. Again, I feel very fortunate to have done it myself, but I know that there'll be others that will do it, and the current Heisman winner comes back next year. He's got a shot at it. But we've got a guy at Ohio State that's pretty good that probably challenge him for that. But it can be done. And if I did it, I know there's somebody else out there that could do it.
All right. Well, I hope we revisit this 15 years from now, you and I, and we're still having this same conversation. What are you proudest of in your career, Archie?
Well, first of all, the teams that I played on, proudest of. And probably the individual award that I'm proudest of is the 31 straight games of rushing for over 100 yards. I mean, that really represents consistency, but it also tells you that the line that I played with, those guys were pretty good. And they opened up some good holes for me to run through. But the consistency aspect of it is something that I'm very, very proud of.
I want to leave you with this. You're on a number of boards now, as we heard, including the National Football Foundation. Why is it important to you to promote the game of football?
Oh, Dave, football has pretty much been my life. I mean, when I think of football, I think about what the game of football has done for me and my family. And I say that because I come from a large family. I've got 6 brothers and a sister. And all of my brothers went to college on football scholarships. And they got their college education because of football. And that's something that, I'll never forget, something I'm very, very proud of, something that my mother and father were very, very proud of, because one of the goals that they had for us was for all of us to get college educations, and football allowed that to happen. And the lessons you learn from football are just absolutely incredible. When you think about it, the main thing about football is the fact that it teaches you how to get up once you get knocked down, because in life, things don't always go that we like them to go. There's tough times, adversity, things that we have to deal with. And if you've been involved in a game like football, you learn that when you get knocked down, you get back up. And to me, that's very, very important. It's a life lesson that will stick with you, something that will help you achieve the things that you want to achieve in life, because you have that never quit attitude.
Archie, this is such a pleasure. It is always so much fun and so illuminating to talk to you. Congratulations on being named a Big Impact Pioneer, and thanks, as always, for giving us some of your time.
And you're so welcome, David. Again, thank you so very, very much, and thank you for recognizing me, and thank you for recognizing Black History Month.
It is time for today's big stat. How about 7 regular season Big Ten titles for the Michigan women's gymnastics team since 2013. They were crowned the champs over the weekend as they again made their way to the top of the conference standings. While we're on the topic of championships, Ohio State's women's swim and dive team made it 3 in a row as they captured the Big Ten title in Madison this weekend. Won 6 events, brought home 12 individual medals. Michigan finished second, followed by Indiana, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. Bill Dorenkott, the director of swimming and diving at Ohio State, joins us now. Bill, congratulations on the championship. Again, 3 in a row. What makes this one particularly satisfying?
I think coming off of a COVID year and all the uncertainty that went into that season, and last year we're fortunate we had some success. And quite frankly, our battle last year wasn't with the other teams in the league. It was just to kind of overcome COVID. And so you get back to a new normal, for lack of a better way of putting it. And we experienced growing pains, I think, like probably any sport and any program in the country. And so just to see the team over the course of this season develop and mature and grow individually and collectively, and it all come to fruition, over the past 3.5 days, it was pretty rewarding.
Bill, it's interesting. I was looking back on kind of conference swimming championships, and prior to 2020, Ohio State had not won a women's swimming and diving championship in the Big Ten in more than 30 years. And now you have won 3 in a row. So to what do you attribute this turnaround?
Well, we're blessed with unbelievable resources at Ohio State, great support. We've put together a heck of a staff, and we found the right athletes who are a great fit for the institution and for the program. And then our goal simply has just been to develop them. And it took a little bit longer than we thought it would. I've been here for 14 years, but couldn't be more proud of where we are right now and where we're heading.
19 of the young women on your team scored 25 or more points this weekend. What does that tell you about the depth of this group? Like, explain to people who don't follow swimming all that closely what that means.
Well, I'm a believer that swimming's a team sport, and so we've approached it from the standpoint of putting together strong, deep teams, and just kind of a Midwest blue-collar work ethic, and we bring it together when it counts, when the lights are bright in February and March.
Michigan had a pretty good run there before you guys started this. They had won 3 Big Tens in a row, and then was a year off, and then you started your streak of 3 in a row. Give people a sense of the rivalry in the pool between Ohio State and Michigan, because I think we're well aware of it in other areas of sport.
Well, I'm going to be honest. It hasn't been a rivalry. They've had our number for decades. When I came here 14 years ago, we averaged 9th in the Big Ten for the 15 years previous. And so, they've pretty much put a beating on us for a long time. And I can say this, that based on this past week, the rivalry is alive and well. And I have no doubt they're going to be bringing their best here moving forward.
You have the NCAAs coming up next month with this group. What's the strategy between now and then to have another situation where you peak again at the right time?
Well, our team is built around relays and strong diving. And so really our focus is on maximizing in those areas. We've got some individual performers who'll be ranked in the top 8 in the country. And, you know, we're pretty purposeful throughout the season in terms of putting together a training plan that sometimes we take our lumps in season with the idea that we're going to be at our best again in February and March. So I don't necessarily look at it as 2 tapers as much as just a multi-peak taper. And so I'm pretty confident, just based on what we've done to this point, we're going to be pretty darn good here in 3 weeks.
The men's championships are coming up this week, and you oversee that program as well. Give us a sense of what your message is to them as you head into Big Tens this week.
Well, I've got a team meeting with them here in about 60 minutes, and the message will be very similar, quite frankly, to what we talked about to the women about, and that's simply, you know, dance with who brought you. And there's a reason we're in the position that we're in right now. We're well prepared. We don't need to do any more than we're capable of doing, and just trust the work you've done, trust your teammates, and put yourself in a position.
Bill, I want to leave you with this. Ohio State lost an incredible figure in its swimming program in September. Longtime coach Bill Wadley passing away, and I know you had a long relationship with him. He oversaw the men's program, not the women's program, but give us a sense of what he meant to you in your journey as a coach.
So, Dave, you know, I grew up in Ohio. I'm a Cleveland guy, and I've been in the Big Ten for 27 years. I got my first job about an hour north of here at a little Division II school called Ashland University. I was a GA, and I used to call Coach Wadley on our days off, and I'd say, hey, can I come down and watch your practices? And he'd always let me come down, and I'd watch practice, then he'd take me out and treat me to a lunch. And, you know, about 10 years after that, he called me up. He said, hey, would you be interested in an assistant position that I have? And at the time, I was at Penn State, and we're kind of in the middle of a pretty good run there. And we were over in Japan on a U.S. national team trip, and we're in the back of a bus in Japan. He said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to share a deck someday? And a couple years later, he called and said, hey, why don't you come out and take a look at this position? And so, you know, I was blessed. I got to walk a deck with a man I looked up to for a long time. And I don't think it's completely sunk in. I was driving out to Notre Dame for a meet last month, and I had about a 4-hour drive. We're doing a little recruiting before we got out to the meet. And it was the first time it really hit me, because normally on that 3 or 4 hour drive, Coach Wadley's the guy I would have called, and we would have talked for an hour and a half and talked shop, talked swimming. And I miss him. And he means a lot to me, and he means a lot to this program.
Well, very sorry for your loss. You obviously did him very proud this weekend, as you've continued to do. Thanks a lot for your time, Bill Dorenkott. Congratulations. Best of luck with the men and best of luck with the women as you head to the national championships.